Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to make some chippy and cracky material in Substance Designer that we can use to kind of blast holes through surfaces in Unreal. So basically what we're trying to do is what you can kind of see on screen right now. We have some sort of tunnel through the brick wall and a tunnel through the concrete wall there, and we have some edge damage, and that's what we're going to accomplish today. And this is a pretty classic method of doing it, and this is a good starting point. It gets way more complicated than this, but this is great because you don't need to have sculpting software. You don't need to have all sorts of crazy stuff and spend a bunch of crazy time. This is pretty quick, and we're going to kick right through it. We're going to start from Substance all the way to Unreal. You will need some sort of modeling package at some point too, and I will kind of go over that as well. So just a reminder, on the screen you can see there's the brick wall and there's the concrete. We've actually made those in previous tutorials. I'll link those in the description. And we've also done the whole world. We've done a beginning with Unreal tutorial that shows you how to kind of set up your basic first world if you really need to do that also. Okay, and just a reminder, I am a really small channel. If you get any kind of benefit from this at all, it really would help me out a lot. A subscribe, a like, any kind of interaction with my videos, comment, whatever. That would help me immensely, and I really do appreciate it. Okay, so let's just start in Substance Designer. Here's the graph, so we're not looking at anything too complicated. And if you have done the chips and chunks tutorial, to be honest, the only part you're going to need to do that's different is this first part here. And I'll let you know when we get to the part that we've done differently. And if you've done that, I'll have a timestamp so you can skip the rest of this, and we'll just get down to business. It is pretty common when you make stuff in Substance Designer to kind of reuse stuff just because you like it. And that's kind of what we're going to go through here. And if you haven't seen that Chips and Chunks tutorial, don't worry about it. I'm going to take you all the way through. So the first thing you need to do when you open up to get to this point is you need to go File, New, Substance Graph, do Metallic Roughness, put in what other name you want, just hit OK. What that's going to do is give you a bunch of different outputs. Now you can delete the output that says Ambient Occlusion, and you can delete the output that says Metal. Okay, so we're going to start with just the main shape of our cutout here. And to look up nodes, you just hit the space bar and you can go in there and look them up. So like say this is polygon 1 here, you can just look that up. I'll show you. There you go, polygon 1. And I will take you from the start all the way to the finish of this material, and I will try my best to get everything single setting in every single node. And those will be over here on the right hand side. Now there is a possibility that I will miss one or two, so if something doesn't look quite right, just kind of look over there and see if you can see something. On editing, I'm going to try my best not to make mistakes, and on editing, if I noticed I made any, I'll try to add in what I missed. But there's always a possibility with all these different settings and all these different numbers that I'll miss a thing here or there, but I will have it open on the screen and you'll be able to find it one way or another, and I'll try my best here. Okay, so let's start out with our main shape, and we're going to put a polygon 1 in. Okay, so for that we want to do sides 10, and we want to do scale 0.68. I believe that's all I said on that. We'll go to transform 2D, and we're going to offset that 0.04, which just moved it up a tiny bit. And then we'll make another shape down here. That one's going to be a square, you can see right there. Scale 0.65, and you can see the size on the Y, 0.71. That smushes it down a little bit, so more of a rectangle. Transform 2D, and offset that negative 0.11, which just moves it down. And our goal, we'll blend those two shapes together, put dunk, dunk into a blend, and our goal is to come up with this barn door looking shape right here. And this will be like our just the base shape for what we're working with. We also want to make a little bit smaller version of this shape. So run this one down, and this blend is, I don't know if I said, the blend is screen. Okay, and that'll just blend white on white. We'll send this blend down to this transform 2D. And with this one, you can see I pulled the handle so that I could make it smaller. And there's really no setting that can describe exactly what I did over here. So just try to mimic what I did, this type of frame around it. Okay? So that's the beginning. That's just our main shape. Okay, now that we have the main shape done, let's head over here and we'll do the outer shape. Okay? So run the bigger shape here into a warp over here for our outer shape. And on that warp, we'll do intensity 2.36, and we'll power that with a purlin. So a purlin noise here, scale 7, disorder 0. Okay, and what that'll do is it'll just kind of warp it around like this. Now for the purlin, again, you can copy my random seeds if you want the exact same version, but I do recommend kind of playing around and getting a version that you want. If you want it to be exact, you'll have to put in these random seed numbers for each of the different noises. So then we'll hop over to another warp, and in that warp we'll go 0.46, and we'll power that by another purlin, and that's scale 26, disorder 0.56, and what that does is it just kind of pulls it out apart a little bit more. And now we'll run this warp into two different directions. So first we'll cover the top one all the way up to a non-uniform directional warp. The intensity of that 60. The degree is 120. You can just pull the handle here over to the right top. Trail length 0, trail fade, trail curve, trail fade 1, trail curve 0. I believe those are all the original settings. Let's power that first with the intensity map of a crystal here. There's the random seed if you want the exact one. Otherwise, like I said, I suggest just randomizing your own. Scale 18, disorder 0 into the intensity map. And then we go black and white spots down here. Black and white spots 1. There's the seed. Scale 3, disorder 0, roughness 0.52. And we'll run that into the warp angle map here. And the non-uniform directional warp, we already went through the settings of that, so we'll just run the output of that into a bevel so that we can kind of bevel these edges here. You'll see as I zoom in. Bevel distance negative 0.01, so this is a very soft, not soft, but small bevel. This is angular for corner type, smoothing 0, and there you go. And you can see what the kind of result we're looking for is. So now we'll go back to our original warp here, and then we're going to go down to the bottom track. Run that into a non-uniform directional warp here. This one's intensity 35.35. Warp angle negative 413, which is the bottom left corner. I must have spun it around. We've got all these other ones, I believe, are the regular settings. We'll power that with the crystal again. This is going to do a little bit bigger damage. You can see how it's pulling it out there. The crystal, there's my random seed if you want to copy that exactly. Otherwise, we've got a scale of 6, disorder 0.6. We'll run that into the intensity map of this non-uniform directional warp. And then we'll do another black and white spots. Scale 2, disorder 0.89, roughness 0.33, and run that in, and this is kind of the result that we're looking for, kind of pulling all these little edges out a little bit here and warping things around. Okay, we'll run that into a bevel. This time the bevel's a little bit bigger because I'm putting two different types of bevels, a smaller and a bigger bevel together. The distance on this is negative 0.06, angular, smoothing 0. Normal intensity 10, which I believe is normal, and that should be everything for that bevel. Now we'll take both of these bevels here and we'll blend them together. The smaller one on top of the bigger one, and we'll go opacity 0.38. We'll go blending mode screen, and you'll see what that does. We go from this to that. Okay, so you can see like it's kind of like pulling out. There's like a less bevel and a bigger bevel here. Okay, so we'll run this blend into a blur because this is a little bit too crunchy. We don't want all these lines here, and you'll see when I run into the blur, we mostly take care of that. Blur at a low intensity of 0.4, and that is our top of our outer shape. You can see here, here's the levels. We're going to take that blur into a levels, pull this white handle down a bit, You can see the settings here, 0, 1, 0.5, 0, 0.643, just to kind of get this more gray, because we're going to overlay the bottom run over this too, and we can't have them both the exact same color. So that's the outer shape for this line here. Now we're going to run a line off this inner shape, which is a smaller version of that barn door. Okay, so bring that barn door down. Now this bottom shape is the exact same stuff as the top shape. So what you could do is you just grab this whole deal here, copy, and then run it down here, paste. Okay, and then instead of running the big one into it, run the small one in. Now you're going to want to go through and change all of your noises, but everything else is going to be exactly the same with the exact same settings. Okay, so I'll show you my noises here, and we'll run through, but we're not going to have to run through any of the other settings. So here's this purlin noise, scale 7, and then there's the random seed. I'm pretty sure what I mostly did was just random seed all the noises. I didn't actually change anything else. So here's the warp that results off of that. So you blend that into the warp intensity 2.36. I'll run through the numbers quick just since we're here anyways. Warp, this one's 0.46. Here's the purlin from before. Scale I believe is the same, 26, 0.56. Here's that random seed number though. Okay, so we'll do the same thing where we run it to the different one up and one down. We'll start with up. Here's non-uniform directional warp. All of these settings are the same as before, so if you copy and paste it, you don't have to worry. Here's the crystal that powers it, scale 18. There's the random seed that you'd have to do. Here's the same thing with the black and white spots powering it. Here's the random seed, scale 3, 0, 0.52 into the non-directional warp. And there's the settings for that. We already went through that. We'll take that down into the bevel. Bevel is exactly the same, negative 0.01, and run that into the blend. Right here, that's going to be screen and 0.38. Same blend as before. So as long as you're just randomizing these noise maps, you should get a pretty good result. You just don't want it to be exactly the same on the inner as the outer. Okay, so now we're going to go to crystal here. This warp comes down into a non-directional uniform warp here. Intensity 35, 35, yep, 413, same angle. So then we'll power that with a crystal. 6, 0.6, there's your random seed if you want to copy that exactly. Here's the random seed for the black and white spots if you want to copy that. Scale 2, 0.89, 0.33 into a non-directional uniform warp, and it kind of does the same thing as it was doing. Well, it does exactly the same thing as it was doing on the top row. Kind of pulls that apart. We'll bevel that with a stronger bevel. This one looks like I changed that number on that bevel because this one was, no, they're the same. They're the same. So the bevel is negative 0.06. Everything else is the same. Angular. Blend those two together. This is the kind of cool result you get with the light bevel on the outside, the hard bevel on the inside. We'll blur that again at 0.4. And just to get rid of some of those lines, you don't get rid of all of them, but some of them are going to be okay. It kind of adds a little character. Take this blur up into this blend and we'll blend those two together. We'll do screen, and that'll put this white, the inner version here, over the top of the outer version. And that's what you're looking for, this type of result here. Okay, so you can see there's a couple different levels. It kind of goes up and then up further. Of course, we want it to go down, but we're going to invert this eventually. So again, we went through the top of the outer shape here. We basically copied that down for the inner shape here. Put the inner shape. And then we went through and randomized all of our noises just to get a different version. So it kind of fits together, but it kind of doesn't fit together. And then we blended those two together. Okay? So hopefully that's pretty clear, pretty easy anyways. I did go through the bottom one real fast, but I probably didn't even really need to go through it because you already had it from the top if you just copy this and paste down there. Okay, and at this point, if you've done our chips and chunks tutorial, the rest of this you already have. So you could actually have just done this part and then brought this copy and paste into the chips and chunks tutorial stuff and connected it right here. And then, so now you can skip ahead to the next part of the video, which I believe I'm going to do the modeling part. And I'll put a timestamp in right now. Okay, so now we're going to go, for people who didn't do that, we're going to keep going along. So now we're going to go to shape variation here, shape variation. So run that up into slope blur grayscale. And you can see here samples 32, intensity 1.72. And we're going to power that with the black and white spots. Here's the random seed, scale 2, 0.58, 0.51. What you can see, here's our original, and here's with it blurred on that slope blur. This makes it very more chunky and rocky. So we'll run that slope blur grayscale into another one, and we'll power that. That'll be samples 32, intensity 0.3. Here will be the black and white spots for that. There's the seed, scale 2, disorder 0.58, roughness 0.47, and run that up into there. So we'll go from this to this. And what this does is it just adds a little bit bigger chunkiness. Run this slope blur grayscale into this slope blur grayscale. This one, samples 32, intensity 0.15, a little bit stronger to make a little bit bigger cuts in, as you'll see, from here to here. And we'll do a black and white spots here. The scale is 2, disorder 0.53, roughness 0.9. 0.09 for roughness. Okay, scale 2, disorder 0.53, roughness 0.09. And the random seed is up there. Run that into this slope blur, which I already talked about, samples 32, intensity 0.15. So we'll run that over here to this levels. And it looks like I just pulled the white handle down a little bit, maybe the gray just a tiny bit. Here are the settings. If you want to just put in the numbers, it doesn't look like I did pull the gray down. So there you go. Just pull the white down. I'm going to run this slope blur grayscale down here and make a mask. So we'll do a levels on that. You can see I pulled these handles here down to try to tighten up the white on black. Really, our mask, the way we're going to do it right now in Unreal, we're not going to use any translucency, so the white is going to be where the damage is, and the black is going to be completely transparent. There is going to be no transition because we're looking for a very performative material. So in the level settings for this one, we've got 0, and here's the settings if you want to put those in, and pause there to have the exact ones. Otherwise, just try to tighten up your mask. And then we run this over here to an output that I named mask. And if you need to put that in, you can just hit the space bar, look up output like that, and there you go, and just change the name. It won't affect your viewport stuff, but we don't need it to. We just need it to be there so that when we output our stuff, we have the mask. Okay, so now we'll go back up here and we'll run that mask into our blend here. So we went levels, where we pulled that white handle down, and we go into a blend. Okay, I believe I went through that levels. So now here in this blend, we'll do multiply opacity 0.3, and we'll run our mask up into the opacity mask of the blend. Now what we're going to blend with that is kind of just a galvanic sort of noise, so we can have more noisiness on the inside here. And you can see the difference clearly between this and that. So go up here, do a grunge galvanic large. It doesn't look like any of those settings are changed. Run that into a slope blur grayscale. That'll be 32 and 0.1. Just kind of pulling it down just ever so slightly. We're going to power that with a moisture noise here. Scale 1. All of these settings here. The pattern size is one that looks like it was changed to 0.15. And what that does is it pulls these spots down and warps them, so it looks like they're running down. And we're going to use that to power our slope blur grayscale. Just kind of make it very faint going down. Then we'll run this slope blur grayscale, which was samples 32, intensity 0.1. We'll run that down into this blend. Okay, and that's the result you get. And again, you can randomize, remember, you can randomize any of these noises to get variations. And that's the power, right, of Substance Designer. That's the power of doing it this way. I mean, if you went through and sculpted this, yeah, you could get a pretty good sculpt, but to make a whole different new looking one, would take you as much time as it took originally. With this, you can just go back, change your shape maybe at the beginning, change some of these settings, and then you have a whole new wear almost immediately. So that's the positive. There are some negatives too, obviously. So now that we're done with shape variation, let's go over to details here. Bring our blend here into a slope blur grayscale. Do a black and white spots to power it. Scale 2, 0.24, 0.48. There's the seed up there. Run that into a slope blur grayscale with samples 32 and intensity 0.02. Now we'll run this slope blur grayscale all the way over to this blend here. And what we want to blend, that's in the background, what we want to blend in the foreground is grunge concrete. So it looks like I did variate the random seed of that. The great thing about grunge concrete as the grunge map is you can see how detailed it gets. This is kind of like your micro detail. So we run the micro detail into the top of the blend. The blend set at copy 0.3. And we want to also make a mask to blend it because I don't like having this everywhere. I don't like having this grunge concrete everywhere because it starts to look too uniform. So we want to have some very micro detail in some very specific places. So let's make a mask to do that. So we'll go back here to our first mask that we made with our levels. I put a couple pins in just to make it more organized, and we'll run that into the opacity of a blend here. Okay, but we're going to start way back here on this grunge rough dirty. So this is just a grunge rough dirty. There's no settings changes to it. I'll transform 2D just to put it horizontal instead of vertical. You can see here you just have to put in 90% or 90 degrees in angle here and hit enter and it'll flip it. And then up here is a black and white spots. There's just a random seed number there. Otherwise everything is just standard, I believe, for that one. So we'll blend those two together with a blend and we'll do subtract. So we'll subtract the spots from that. It'll make this kind of cool blend map here. So that would be subtract opacity 1. We'll send that up to levels. We'll level that out. We'll pull these handles down, like the gray down a little, the white down a little. Here are the settings for that if you want to put the exact numbers in. So now we take this levels and we put it into the top of a blend with copy, and we put this on top, and then we'll blend it using that mask, which basically just masks out the edges you can see there. I take this blend and run this into a levels, and we'll pull the black handle up, and what that does is it'll give us a little bit gray on the outside, so nothing's completely black. And even though we're masking off this, if there is some stuff on the edges, we want to make sure there's a little bit of bump there just to kind of keep it kind of not look like there's a straight color around the edge. That's why I have this little bit of gray in this levels. So we take this levels up and we use that as our opacity mask. We blend our grunge concrete over way back here that I showed before, the slope blur grayscale, and there you go. There's the result of those blends together. So that's great. That's basically our height map. We'll run that into our height done here, with it, which is an invert grayscale, because like of course we're not trying to have it bump out, and with this the white is the highest part and the black is the lowest, so we're going to invert it. And the reason I work with it that way is because I have a lot easier time seeing the detail when I'm working with the black background. So we'll run that into height done, and this would be now the black is down and it's an invert grayscale. So let's run that invert grayscale down into our height map output here. So now we have two outputs done. We have our mask and our height, and I put for the identifier HEIDHT up here in the right in caps. And I also took our height done here and run it into normal Sobel, and we can put intensity 4.25. Play around with the intensity as you will. That's what I determined on this one. That's about as high as I'd want to go. But we'll take that normal Sobel and we'll run it all the way over here, which for some reason it was over there, but let's put it closer. Here's our normal output. So normal Sobel into normal output, NRM. So now that means we have our normal map done, our height map done, which we won't even be using the height map, but it's always good to have one. And we'll have our mask done. So now that we have the height map done, let's start working on our color map. And we're going to keep it pretty simple. So we're going to start with a base color here, and we'll add a uniform color node in, and I'll show you the hexes for these. This one's 737373 for that color. We'll open up another uniform color here, 757482, and we're going to blend those two colors together with just a regular blend on copy. And we're going to power that with a grunge map 08. So these are all the normal settings for that. You can randomize that if you want. Doesn't look like I did. This will be the result of blending those two colors together. You can see just a variation between the gray and like a bluey gray. So then that's our base color done. Now we'll go to dirt color here. Let's open up this one. Here's our hex for that one, 706454. That's a brown. We'll do another one. And here, 7E7155. We'll blend those two colors together with copy, opacity 1. This is just a grunge map 1. I like the way that one looks. So pull that one up into your blend, and now this is what you get for that color. Just a good mix of a lighter brown and a darker brown. That'll be for our dirt. So now we have our two colors, so let's start our dirt. So this is our dirt section here. So let's start with our height done. Pull that up to a pin up here, HBAO, ambient occlusion. Pull it up. I didn't make any changes to that, so that's just the standard ambient occlusion, HBAO. And then we'll run that from there to a gradient map. And what that does is it just makes it so you can mix it with color. And we'll run it to the top of a blend here. Okay? So I know this might be a little bit weird how we're kind of wrapping around, but we came from height done to HBAO to gradient map to blend. And in this blend, we're going to multiply that gradient map over opacity 0.08. Okay? So now let's get to the other parts of it. So we also need a curvature smooth. So put that in and power that with our normal Sobel, the normal that just ran in front of our normal output. Curvature smooth, no change settings there, and then we'll put in a dirt. And for the dirt, we'll do a search, and you can just search dirt. And you can see it's this dirt here, the one that's on the circular model dealie. It's not these dirts up here. You need to do this one. It's more the function that has the input pins. So this dirt gets powered by an ambient occlusion and a curvature. And we have those right here. So you take your HBAO ambient occlusion into the top, curvature smooth into curvature, and this is the result of that dirt map. It's trying to just add a map or a mask that masks off a good place to put dirt based on those maps. So now we'll pull that down into a blend right here on copy with opacity 1, and what powers these are our colors. So here's our base color here. That comes down into the second pin for background. And our dirt up here, you can see the dirt color it says. This comes down into the foreground, and this goes over the color. And then what that'll do is anywhere where it's masked off, it'll put the dirt. And you can see the result of the brown on the gray color, of where it's kind of putting the dirt on the insides of the cracks. Okay, so now we'll run that dirt. This is the output that we run into that blend that we made earlier that we multiplied this gradient map over. So up to this blend goes this mask, and this is multiply at 0.08, and that is dirt. So we'll run this dirt into another blend here. And this blend we're going to add a little edge wear to. So this goes into the background of a blend with screen in 0.13. Okay? So we'll do a little bit of edge damage here. So we'll pull this height done into a regular normal, not a normal Sobel. So we're using a different one. They just have a little different variation in how they change a height map into a normal map. So run the height map into the normal map of a regular normal. We'll put the intensity at 3, run that into a curvature Sobel, and see what that does is it kind of like You can kind of see where everything bumps out and it kind of goes around the edginess. Run that into the curvature of an edge damages right here. And you can pull down that ambient occlusion HBAO down there into the ambient occlusion of the edge damages. And this is what you get for that. Okay. Now we'll run that into a gradient map. And then we'll run the gradient map up into a blend. And what you see it does there is it kind of highlights some of the edgy parts around it and even the bumps on the inside. So we go from this to that. Okay? And it kind of gives us some definition around the edges. So now this blend again was screen 0.13, which I believe I said. I run that into a levels. This was just after testing, just to lighten it up just a tiny bit. You can see I pulled the dark handle up a little bit. Here are the settings if you want to put in the exact numbers. It's in color, so there's a lot more settings, but you can put them all in. And run that into our base color output. Okay, so now we have our color map, we have our normal map, we have our height map, and we have our mask. And for the color, we do a COL for the output in my identifier. And I don't think I mentioned for the normal map, we do NRM for the output. And that just helps it keep it nicely named when we export the textures. Like you can see I have T wall damage here on the left, and it'll put the suffixes of the outputs after that. That way I don't have to change the name when I go into Unreal or anything or move it around. So now that's pretty much all our maps except for roughness, and we'll do a really simple roughness map. Normal Sobel down here into curvature smooth. Okay. Again, this normal Sobel was set to 4.25. I don't know if I mentioned this normal up here was set to 3, but this normal is set to 3. This normal comes down to this curvature smooth. Invert that. We're just going to use that for our roughness map, just because it just needs to be really rough. It doesn't really matter. We'll do levels here just to make it very faint and light. You can see I pulled the black handle up. Here are our settings here if you want to put in the exact ones. Run that into our roughness output. And then we have roughness, ROUGH there. Okay, so that should give us all of our maps. So that's pretty much the Substance Designer part of this deal. Hopefully I didn't miss anything and that was pretty clear. So to export for that, you just right click on it, export outputs. And you'll see here it shows you kind of like a preview of what it's going to be named based on your name and your suffixes as you go down. You can click on them. We'll put mine in a spot. You choose where you want to put it. I do BMPs. I change everything to sRGB just because that's easier for me when I'm testing things out. You can always switch it up depending on where you are in the process and if you want them to be raw. But right now we're just going to keep them as sRGBs. We're going to export these outputs and then we're going to close her down. And that's pretty much that. So now let's head over to kind of show you how you make the damage model for this puppy. Okay, so here we are in 3D Studio Max, and you can see here is the damage model I made. Very simple. You can go a lot more complicated than this as far as adding edges or whatever else. You're going to need to use your own modeling software. I'm using 3D Studio Max, and I'm going to show you kind of the way that I put this type of model together, but yours might vary depending on what modeling software you use, but this should give you a good idea. I don't know if I'm going to model this whole thing or not, but it should give you a good idea. We'll see how fast we start kicking through it. So let me also unhide here, and you can see that this model sits over this other model here. Hide unselected. And you can see this is our wall that we're just going to put regular textures on, and then our damage will kind of act like a decal over the top of it by laying a little bit over the top of it and then having that transparency. And the benefit is then you can have whatever texture you want on this wall, and then this wall will look like it's crushing through, and then you can just think about all the different variations you can do, just putting holes in and doing it in this same sort of way, in this same sort of, with this same sort of workflow. So let's just try So let me just show you how I made that model, and we'll try to do it quick. And if I'm not getting quick enough, maybe we'll just do part of it and then move along. So the first thing I want to do is just add a plane in here. This will just be for, and I do 300 by 300. It's just a standard thing I do. That's just the standard stuff I use. I'll open up my material browser. I have a copy of the normal map in there, and I'm just using that to build my model off of, right? So I'm just going to pull that back a little bit. We're just going to work over to the side here, okay? And just as quick as I can kind of do it. So now we'll just make up another plane that we're going to work on, just a little one here. I'll pull that right in front. I'm going to have our wall is 20 centimeters out, so I want to put this location at 20.1 to have it a millimeter away from our wall. You can see when I put it over our wall, it's a little bit off out of from it. Okay. Now we'll Alt X to make that transparent, and we'll go into just the front viewport. And there you go. Now I would just try to follow along. Convert this to an editable poly. Now I would just try to follow along the edges. This would be the flat part of where it connects up. So we'd want to just kind of follow along with our model here, and I'll show you. And now I put these little dots on. They're kind of registration dots, and I'll show you what I use those for in a minute. So we'll just kind of pull out, shift and pull, just to kind of make our faces here. And then like rotate when we need to. And then just kind of keep going along. Like so. We're not trying to do, like, this is just a very simple explanation of how I did it. We're not trying to do a perfect job. I'm just trying to show you what I did. Just kind of pull those along. I'm going to pull an extra face out here. Extra face down there. And then go back through with your verts and just kind of like adjust them where you want them to be. So like say we have this little bump here we want to have in there. We could pull out another face. Like target weld this to that, something like that. Pull that to like the bump there. And we'll just kind of go around and we'll just do a quick version. I might not do this whole thing because I've already done it, but I just want to show you kind of the idea of what I was going for here. So we want to make sure we get this on the edges. This we can pull out a little bit to encompass that. That we can pull out to encompass that a little bit. This one, let's just pull this out like that. Target weld this to this. That way we're encompassing this little bumpy part on the normal map. And the reason I use the normal map is just because it kind of like I can tell what's going on with it a little bit better. We can pull this part here, make this a little bit better as far as like rounding it off. So yeah, that's the general idea. Now, why do I have these little dots? It's kind of to register it. Like for this, we could actually use this part too. Kind of like target weld that to that. Maybe move this over there. And then like here, you could pull this, and this is what I use the dots for. So I kind of pull that face out there, maybe pull this face here. These aren't actually going to be in the model at the end, but they're just so I can UV it better. So target weld that to that. move this into the middle of the dot. Something like that. Put that vert there. And then you'll understand what I'm doing here in a second. So target weld this to that. Doesn't really matter. Grab this, pull this up here, and put that in there. Okay? So that's the general idea for how you make the part that's going to be flat against the wall. So what we can do now is hide that. Hit Alt-X on this to show it. We'll use our material, our normal map material. We'll just apply that so we can make sure it lines up. Then we'll unwrap that quick. Then we'll just do a flatten map quick. Flatten mapping, okay. And there's our shape. Rotate that a couple times. Let's move it out. Let's make sure to show our registering map. You can see there's our normal map. And the reason I put those dots on there should be kind of apparent now. Because what we're trying to do is match these registration dots by scaling it to the right side so that this corner and this corner down here hit the dots. So now I'm just going to scale it up a little bit. You want to get it, it doesn't have to be perfect, but the idea is so that you can just kind of line it up better. That one's good. And that one's pretty good. So now you have the edges of your model done. Okay? So you can collapse that down. And then if you want, we'll kind of keep going a little bit here. Maybe we'll do the whole thing. I don't know. So let's just grab this and that. We don't need those anymore and delete those out. I made this extra thing down here so I could just bridge it. Just like that. Then we'll just cap this inside. So I'm just holding Shift key and scaling, and it pulls those faces out. And we'll do that. I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. Probably do something like that. Let's actually go to our perspective viewport so we can kind of work with it that way now. And what we want to do is we can pull this back like maybe 10. So just put 10 on the Y there. Something like that. And then let's delete this out. Delete these bottom faces out here. And this is at 0, so we'll just put this at 0. Actually, no, this is at 103,761, so just go just to make that level with the bottom there. And then we'll do another, like, let's just do an extrude. And we'll go the opposite direction. Just do 10. And if I calculated that right, that should put us right at 0. It's not quite at 0, so let's just put it at 0. And that's kind of the general idea of how we made that shape over here, right? Okay, so that's the general idea for the modeling. Let me show you how to kind of UV that probably pretty quick. We already had the UVs on the outside here. So let's unwrap that. Open that up. Let's grab some of these edges. So like this. Let's pull those down in here a little bit. And then maybe this. And we can pull those down like right there. And you can kind of come in. This is super easy. You don't really need to, I like to keep all this fixed because it's nice and perfect. So now you can come in and adjust these. And all you really need to do is go around and just watch how it's stretching in your viewport here. You can see when it looks pretty good, it'll kind of come together. And then for here, you do the same thing. Something like so. What you could do is guesstimate a little bit first and then come back and do some tweaks. So just guesstimate along like this, that looks pretty good. Just try to follow the edge flow that way for kind of like those. And you can see when it comes in, you'll start to not have the stretching. So that'll kind of like give you that. And you can go around the whole thing doing that. So like if we kept going, let's just do it. We'll do this, that. Let's pull those down. Like that. I don't know what's going on down over there. So then we kind of just keep going around, you know. Just do that, that, something like that, something like that, something like that. So there you go. And that just makes sure we're keeping this outside ring plus and getting the good UVs on the inside here. Let's open this quick. Where is this face? Okay. Weird, so we're just going to kind of redo it quick. Let's stitch that there. Then we'll just move these around. We're getting close. I might as well do the whole thing since we're this committed now. And just follow these around, which we've already done. So now we just need the inside edges. So like this one, that one, this one, that one, this one, that one. So then we'll just pull them like this. And we can just kind of do what we were doing before. Just align them like that, that, follow it around. We have another goofy thing that it mapped funny, so we'll have to fix that. But other than that, we're in pretty good shape. So we'll just do the last one. All right, so you're kind of seeing the wildness of UV mapping here when it doesn't go perfectly right. Let's just do that and that. And there you go. And let's look at that and see any crazy stretching going on. And it doesn't really look like there is. So that's probably pretty good. So what you could do then, collapse that. And then grab this, clear all, and smooth it or whatever. And there you go. And that's essentially how I made this one over here. You can see it. So we're not going to do any more. I just mirrored that over to the other side so we could have it match up, and I'll show you here. So here's the one we ended up with, right? And I have it mirrored on the other side. You can add some like variation in the distances between these edges. That'll add some things. And in the future, you could make this a lot more high poly. Once you get it like UV'd to this point, adding edges and going crazy and doing crazy stuff is a lot easier. So if you look here, you can see there's our UV map for that one. Okay. And then I just made a wall that kind of followed that. So like you put in like 300 by 300. Like here, I'll show you real quick. Since we only have so much time, I want to get into Unreal. So to do the wall, I'll just do like a 300 by 300. And just put that at -20 to line it up. So like it lines up with this wall here, you can see. Go to this, convert it editable poly. Like we could say we did that and then snap these together. Like attach these together, weld them together, and then like maybe pull up these or whatever you want to, however you want to do it. And then you can put in these edges, like do swift loop, like bunk, bunk, follow wherever the edges are on that thing, bunk, 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 and then pull in these edges here. And I'll show you kind of like the end result. But we're getting kind of close to being, this is taking way too long. So this is the end result. So this follows around the wall here, height unselected. You can see I merged these together to save polys. You can see we followed and made like a little bit of a edge on the inside, pulled that out. And then you just want to have your like outer material on the outside and then like a different material along the edges. So hopefully that's enough to get you started. I'm not going to make all of that because we're already going pretty long. And now we're going to hop over to Unreal. So now we're in Unreal, and what you can see here is kind of accumulation of what we did, right? So here's that model, and here's the edgeware model. So if we hide this or move it or whatever, you can see here's our original model here with the brick texture, and we've got, you know, we've got a version with the concrete. So now we'll just move this back over the top, and you can see the end result of what we're looking at here is the damage breaking through the wall. So hopefully that's pretty clear. I'll show you how to make the materials for this edgeware. So as you can see here, we're just using our brick wall and our concrete wall that we've created in previous tutorials. And I'll link those in the description. And I have them here in this. For this one, we made a new master material, and we called it M normal bump CRON with underscores because none of the channels are packed. Which reminds me, we do have to import our textures. So you go to textures here, and you can go and right click and import into current folder, and then wherever you put your textures that we exported, import them in. And we're going to need the color, we're going to need the mask, the normal, and the rough. Right now we're not using the height. Okay, import them into there. They'll replace those out or put them in to wherever you want them. And then we're going to make our material. And like I said, we are doing this M normal bump CRON to make a material. Just right click, create new material right here, name it that. Let's take a look at it. Now it is going to be a little complicated. I am going to run through it a little bit fast because we do have a tutorial on making materials. So I'm going to kind of explain what we're doing, but I'm not going to go real slow. To look things up in this, you have to right click. So we can pull in our color map here, or these, for me, I put in 1 pixel by 1 pixel white textures. Anyways, this is just a placeholder because we're making a master material, and I always like to start with a master material and make a material off it. That gives us all, otherwise we just run into all these master materials mucking everything up, and when you're at the end of the process, you're like, you don't know which one does what. So we bring in you can bring in our color map that we just made, and it'll make this texture sampler and convert it into a color map parameter. So right click, convert it to a parameter, and name it color map. Okay? Then we run that into a multiply. Again, to look things up, you can right click and type in multiply. This is a vector 4. So hold the 4 key and left click, name that tint, turn that into a parameter and name that tint. Multiply that by the color map, saturate it, put in a saturate, and run that into base color. For specular, I keep that at 0.35. Personal preference, you can just put that at 0.5 if you want, or just leave it. Roughness map, we bring our roughness map in, convert that into a parameter named roughness map. Do a remap value range. That'll allow us to kind of make the roughness max stronger and weaker if we needed to in our material instance. Do a couple constants here. That's just the 1 key and left click, and you can put 2 in. Right click to convert those to parameters. Delete, delete. And we'll have 1 at value 0, 1 at value 1. Actually, you don't need to convert these to parameters. Sorry, don't convert these to parameters. They're just values. Plug 0 into input low, 1 into input high. These ones are parameters down here, so bonk, bonk, and right click, we name one roughness min, one roughness max. Put in 0 and 1 for that, target low, target high. And then run the remap value range into roughness. So just run in your opacity, your mask into this opacity, and then rename it, create a parameter out of it, and put opacity. Again, I'm using 1 pixel by 1 pixel placeholder textures. You can really use any placeholder texture and put in your ones we just made, or you can put in the ones we just made. Okay, so run this opacity into our opacity of our output here. If you don't have that pin, which you probably won't, over here on the left, when you have this clicked, put this as surfaced masked. Like normally it'll be on opaque, just change this to masked, and that'll allow you to mask it off. And then you'll have the opacity pin here you can plug opacity into. So now for normal map, pull your normal map in, convert it to a parameter, break out float 3 components, look that one up. What this is going to allow us to do is to strengthen or weaken the normal map if we want. Put in a parameter, the 1 key left click, can right click and turn that to a parameter, call that normal strength. Put that at 1, make sure to set that because otherwise you're going to have 0. You don't want to multiply by 0. So you take the red into a multiply, the green into a multiply by our normal strength in the B, run those two into append them back together, so the red is appended back to the green. So run the blue into the append on the bottom, and run this append to the append on the top, and that would be RGB back appended together. Make sure the order is correct, and then pull that up into your normal over here. Okay, now I'm just going to give us the ability to tile it if we want to. So look up texture coordinate, like that, delete. You can run that into a multiply, make a couple of parameters, name one tile U, tile V, we've done this before. Put 1 in these. I don't know how many times I made the mistake of not putting a value in, so put 1 in, otherwise you're tiling 0 times. Append that, run that into the multiply, run this multiply into the UVs of all your texture samples, and you have your master material complete. I know I ran through that fast, but again, I do have a master material tutorial that we've already done that goes through this slower. So if you want to check that out, I'll have that video linked in the description too. So let's just shut that down. And now, so we'll take this one, the normal bump CRON, which is color, roughness, opacity, normal, right click and make a material instance. And that's how I got this MI for material instance, wall damage, ONB, which is opacity, normal bump. Open that up. And then all I did was pull in our textures. So here's color, normal, opacity, and roughness. So you go to our textures here, and you can just pull in color to there, normal to there, opacity there, and roughness there. And there you go. There's our material. And you apply that to the models that we made, or that I showed you how to make in 3D Studio Max. So you can see here in my meshes folder, I brought those 2 models in, and here's the model that we made. So just import, just import to current folder, and then just import it. I import it without materials, just so that it doesn't get confusing, and then I can add my own. And you can see here's that model there, and then here's the model for the wall. So here are our meshes here. Let's just pull them in so I can show you. Pull in the wall, rotate that 90 degrees. We'll pull in our damage. We'll rotate that 90 degrees. And we just want to make sure they're in the same position. 800, 1750. So 800. There you go. Now they're on top of each other. So now for this one, I made a couple material spaces, and you can see here in our materials, we've made this MI brick wall palm. So again, there's going to be a tutorial listed in the description. Let's pull that in. You can see that covers in there. And then we'll just do MI concrete normal bump for the edges. See, that'll fill in the edges. And then for this one is that new material we just made, the MI wall damage. Zoop. And there you go. and it fills it in, and you get that really nice cracky effect on there. Okay, so we're using, you can see here, let's open that material back up. So we're using the blend mode masked, and this is very similar to what you would do if you were doing like a decal and trying to use translucent. But translucent and decal is a lot more expensive. When we use this masked, it gives it like an on and off position. And it's very beneficial because you won't get quite, like, it's not going to blend as perfectly. You can kind of see here on the edges, it's not perfect, but it really is good enough. Let's zoom in, and you can kind of see the result here. You can see how the normal pushes in, and you can see how it kind of does blend, but there's this harder edge. Okay, one thing you want to make sure you do when you put that in, it's like on this, just for your damage model, just make sure it's not casting shadows, because you don't really need it to cast shadows on the wall below. So you turn that off, and then you can turn off affect distance field lighting. You don't really need it to do that either. And then there you go, and then there's your result. So the reason I do it this way, this is a very tried and true way of doing damage in walls. So it looks like it's there and it's rounding things off. And of course you can add more details, like say you stuck some bricks sticking out over here, or say you stuck some rebar sticking out from the concrete or whatever. So if you notice, I did a concrete version too here. Same thing. You can move in, you can, and that's the benefit of this, is you can change up what's the background, you can move these things around, you can do all sorts of different holes, and you get all sorts of nice results on it. So I think that's basically what we're gonna go over. I can't really think of a whole lot else. I mean, obviously you could do more to this model to make it look crunchier on the inside, and that's just down to however you model it. You can see, like, when you do mirror it, you don't get a seam, and you'll get it nice on the other side too. Like, let's just pull in a point light quick, and you can kind of see, knock that down, that's way too bright. But yeah, you can see you get a good result on the other side as well, and you get that nice edge damage. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. I know there was a lot to it, and I know we didn't necessarily go perfectly over all of it. Like, for one thing is the meshes, I imported those. We didn't go through the creation of all of it, but hopefully that gives you enough to give you a good idea of how to do some cool edgeware like this. This does save a lot of time over like sculpting and stuff like that. Of course, sculpting, you will get some better results in some instances and some worse results in some other instances. So there's two pros and cons, but this is one of the most commonly used methods that's been used for years. It's a more simple method, and I thought we'd go over that today. So thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. This was a tougher video. If you did like it, give me a like and subscribe, and I really hope you have a great day, and take care of yourselves.